Peace be upon you, and welcome to a new episode. On an ordinary day in September 2021, in Kalyubia Governorate, one of the locals was walking near a canal called Saba Canal. He noticed a black plastic bag floating on the surface of the water. He cautiously approached it, reached out to pull it out, thinking it was just some trash. But when he opened it, what he saw froze him in place for a moment before he ran to report it to the police. Inside was part of a human body, slightly decomposed, almost as if it had been hiding a buried secret for months. The police rushed to the scene, and the initial examination revealed that the body wasn't whole, but just a part of a man who had clearly done hard labor, his body covered in scars. And that's when the mystery began to unfold. Who was this victim, and why had no one reported him missing? Before we start our story, don't forget to like and share the episode so it reaches as many people as possible. And stay tuned every Saturday, Monday, and Wednesday for a new episode. Without further delay, let's dive deep into our story. In 1992, in the heart of Minya Governorate, Ayman was a young man in his 20s, starting his life with very simple dreams, just like any young Upper Egyptian man. Enough money to live with dignity, and a job that would lift him out of the poverty that eats away at the soul day after day. Ayman didn't have a higher education or a wealthy family to support him, so he started working any job he could find. Helping move goods in the market, selling fruit on the sidewalk, or working in a small metal workshop. Every day he woke up early, put on his dusty clothes, and went out searching for an opportunity. But the income was always very little, and expenses kept growing. By the end of that year, Ayman began hearing from some friends in the small cafes about faster ways to make money, like stealing small items here and there without anyone noticing. He thought about it for a long time and decided to try it just once, hoping it would change his life. His first attempt was a simple theft from a small shop. He took some merchandise and sold it elsewhere, and the money he made him feel powerful for the first time. But the police in Minya weren't asleep. They caught him during a second attempt and charged him with theft and assault with a bladed weapon during a fight that broke out while he was doing it. The prosecution handled the case quickly, and the court sentenced him to a few months in prison. He entered prison for the first time, thinking about what had happened, and decided he would change his approach. Once he got out, Ayman was released in 1993, and he tried to return to honest work, loading and unloading goods again. But poverty soon began pressing hard on him after just a few weeks, and his old friends started calling him with new opportunities. And indeed, he returned to theft. The police caught him again, and he was charged with theft and fighting. The court sentenced him to 6 months, and he went back to a cell once more. There, he learned more complicated tricks from other criminals and came out stronger in his criminal mindset. He decided to change locations a bit, traveling between Upper Egyptian governorates so the police wouldn't know exactly where he was. From March 1994 to January 2000, he was in and out of prison for armed theft and violent altercations. Neighbors in Minya started to know him as a tough man, not someone to be messed with. And he began to feel that this label, registered dangerous criminal, was becoming part of his identity. He wasn't upset by it. On the contrary, he bragged about it to the people around him. But after the last time he left prison, he made a decision. He would change his life completely, get married, and build a family. At that time, while Ayman was traveling between governorates looking for better work opportunities, he met Zainab by chance at an event in a governorate near Minya. Zainab was in her 30s, living a life similar to Ayman's. She had no stable job and had started her own criminal record in 1995 with a case of fighting and assaulting a group of people during an old dispute. She was sentenced to a fine and a few months of suspended imprisonment, so she understood very well the harshness of life and what could happen when someone stands face to face with difficult circumstances. Ayman saw in her the perfect partner, strong, unafraid of trouble, so they talked a lot, and he eventually proposed. The marriage took place in 1998, a simple ceremony with only a few relatives. Immediately after the wedding, Zainab joined Ayman in his unstable work, moving with him between governorates. But the crime didn't stop. In November 1998, Ayman committed a small theft, was arrested, and imprisoned for 3 months, leaving Zainab to manage things alone. Ayman was released in March 1999, and afterward they were blessed with their only daughter, Sarah, born in a modest home in Minya. Ayman saw in her a new hope. He decided she would change his life for the better. But reality was different. By 2000, Ayman returned to theft and assault in the local market, going in and out of prison again, while Zainab raised Sarah alone, working any job that could bring money. Ayman was released from prison, and the family began moving more frequently between Minya and nearby governorates. In 2001, when Sarah was 2 years old, Ayman tried to settle down a bit. He bought some goods to sell in the market, but he still hadn't changed. He stole from a business partner, was charged with theft, and imprisoned for 4 months. Sarah grew up seeing her father going in and out of prison, and Zainab kept trying to calm him down, but he insisted that this path was what would protect the family. Ayman began thinking about a more stable type of work. In 2005, when Sarah was 6 and the family was living in a temporary place in Minya, Ayman decided to buy small amusement park rides to run at local festivals, Mawalid. He saw this as a legitimate way to travel between governorates and make money without major risks. Zainab agreed and helped him set everything up. They started working at festivals around Upper Egypt, and the job brought in some money, but Ayman was still causing trouble on the side. The family continued working in the amusement business. In 2009, Ayman expanded the business, buying more rides, but his criminal record made him officially labeled as dangerous. Ayman was proud of the title. He saw it as proof of his strength. Zainab agreed with him, saying he was a man everyone respected. By 2013, the business had improved. The family traveled between Upper Egypt's governorates, and 14-year-old Sarah began helping with the amusement rides. Ayman once again promised himself the problems wouldn't be repeated. In 2015, when Sarah was 16, Ayman met Mohammed, a 20-year-old young man from Kalyubia Governorate who had come to visit relatives in Upper Egypt. Mohammed didn't have a stable job but was willing to do anything for money, just like Ayman once had been. Ayman saw him as a suitable helper and hired him in the amusement business that year to help manage the work. Mohammed learned quickly and began respecting Ayman like a father, and Ayman saw him as a trustworthy young man. But in October 2015, Ayman committed a small theft from a customer, and Mohammed covered for him. The police didn't catch them. In 2016, Sarah, now 17, began noticing Mohammed while they worked together at the festivals. They talked a lot, and eventually Mohammed formally asked Ayman for her hand in marriage, saying he loved her and could build a life with her. Ayman considered it and saw Mohammed as suitable. He understood the work and wouldn't cause trouble. Zainab agreed, saying he was a good match for Sarah. The engagement took place in September 2016, and the wedding was held in February 2017 in Kalyubia Governorate, where Mohammed settled in a small apartment near a well-known local amusement area. Mohammed told Ayman he would stop working with him for a while, stay in Kalyubia with Sarah, and work in the local amusement business. Ayman agreed. Sarah and Mohammed began their new life in Kalyubia, but Sarah's family didn't pay much attention. They were busy with their own work in Upper Egypt. Ayman returned to Minya and held a big festival event, but got into a fight with a customer and was jailed for a month. Meanwhile, Muhammad visited his family in Upper Egypt and told Sarah that her father was strong but needed to reduce his violence and problems. After that, visits between the two families became extremely rare. Ayman focused on the amusement business in Upper Egypt, which increased his fights with Zainab, especially about money. Zainab felt he controlled everything, and he justified it by saying he carried all the responsibility. Later, Sarah became pregnant with Muhammad's child, but the hard work at the amusement rides exhausted her, and Muhammad supported her as much as he could. Finally, the COVID-19 pandemic affected the amusement business and reduced work, leading Ayman into more trouble. He was imprisoned again for 3 months, then released in October. He and Zainab decided to move their lives to Kalyubia because work there was better and more stable. All of this built an atmosphere of family tension and criminal instability that would eventually lead to bigger events later on, showing how strained and unbalanced the relationships between the characters had become. At the beginning of 2021, Zainab received a phone call from Muhammad. He told her that Sarah had died of natural causes, though he didn't know the exact reason. The news hit the family like a thunderbolt. But Ayman and Zainab's reaction was strange. Ayman simply said, "May God have mercy on her," and added that what mattered now was the apartment and her furniture. Zainab agreed, saying they needed to go check on things. They traveled to Kalyubia Governorate and saw the apartment. The furniture was new and well arranged, much better than what they had back in Upper Egypt. Ayman immediately decided they would move their entire life there. He told Muhammad that the amusement park business in Kalyubia was good, and that he would work with him whether he liked it or not. Muhammad, who was afraid of Ayman because of his reputation, agreed without hesitation. In March 2021, they moved all their belongings into that same apartment which had belonged to the late Sarah. Muhammad began seeing them every day, observing every detail of their lives, especially the daily fights between Ayman and Zainab. Ayman controlled everything. All the amusement park money went to him, and he decided how much each person would get. Zainab grew angry at this control, saying she was tired of being treated like a servant. In April 2021, a huge fight broke out over the money earned from a long day at the amusement park. Ayman insisted that everything stay with him so he could decide everyone's share. Zainab responded that she would not accept that. The shouting was so loud that the neighbors heard it. One of them tried to intervene, but Ayman threatened him, saying he would harm him. The neighbors decided to stay away completely. No one in that quiet village wanted trouble with a registered dangerous criminal like Ayman. Their routine continued like this. In the morning, they all went to the amusement park work. Muhammad, Zainab, and Ayman spent the whole day working, then returned at night to fight, then sleep. By May 2021, the fights got worse. Zainab began thinking to herself that she couldn't live like this anymore, and she decided she had to get rid of Ayman. But she couldn't do it alone. She needed help. She began whispering to Muhammad at the amusement park, telling him he was like a son to her and that Ayman was destroying all their lives. At first, Muhammad completely rejected the idea, saying it was forbidden and he would never do such a thing. But Zainab kept pressuring him. She said Ayman beat her every day, and if Muhammad wouldn't help, she would tell Ayman that Muhammad had stolen money from the amusement park earnings, which would get him killed, or she would do it alone and let him take the blame. Muhammad, who already had a criminal mindset similar to Ayman's, started thinking about the risks and eventually decided to help to protect himself. This was when the real planning of the crime began. In June 2021, Zainab and Mohammed would meet and talk about the plan, and Zainab was the one directing everything. She said they would take advantage of the fact that Ayman was a registered criminal, so if he suddenly disappeared, the police would assume he got into trouble somewhere outside Kalyubia, and they wouldn't suspect them. The first step in the plan was figuring out how to make Ayman sleep deeply. Zainab decided she would put strong sleeping pills in his food or drink, buying them from a nearby pharmacy, and she would choose a day after long, exhausting work, so he would already be tired and wouldn't notice any strange taste. Muhammad agreed to this part but said he wouldn't be able to participate in what comes next. So Zainab explained that the second step would be that once Ayman fell asleep, she would do what would make him unable to move at all, using a kitchen weapon like a sharp knife, delivering a quick stab to a vital area so it would end fast without a loud noise that could alert the neighbors. Muhammad hesitated a lot and said it would be difficult, but Zainab threatened him again, telling him that if he didn't help, she would know how to make Ayman kill him. So Muhammad agreed that he would help with what happens after the stabbing. The third step was the hardest, cutting the body into small parts to make it easy to transport. Zainab said they would divide him into three main parts. On the night of July 20th, 2021, after they came home late from work, Zainab prepared tea as usual and added the pills to Ayman's cup. He drank it while talking about the day and the money they had earned, saying he would divide it tomorrow. He fell asleep extremely fast, an unnaturally heavy sleep. Zainab looked at Muhammad and told him the time had come. They entered the room. Ayman was sleeping like a dead man. Zainab took the knife and delivered the stab that ended everything quickly without much noise, and Muhammad helped hold the body so it wouldn't move. The cutting began immediately. Zainab cut him into several pieces, and Muhammad helped with the lower part. There was a lot of blood, but they cleaned it quickly with water and disinfectant, and the whole process was finished in less than an hour. They wrapped each part in a strong plastic bag, and at 2 a.m., they left the apartment. Muhammad carried 2 bags, Zainab carried the third. They quietly walked to the designated places, throwing the first into Sabah Canal, the second into the sewage drain, and the third into the side canal without anyone seeing them. The village was completely asleep. They returned to the apartment, cleaned any trace, and went to sleep normally. The next day, July 21st, 2021, they went down to the amusement rides as usual, Muhammad on the motorcycle, Zainab behind him, and worked the whole day in complete normality in front of everyone, as if nothing had happened. At the beginning of August 2021, Ayman had been missing for a whole month. Zainab told the neighbors that he had traveled for work to another governorate and wasn't calling much. The neighbors believed her because it was known that he sometimes traveled, but the police in Kalyubia governorate, especially the public security sector, were monitoring Ayman from a distance because of his criminal record. On August 10, 2021, the criminal investigation officer noticed that Ayman had not shown up at the amusement park at all and told his team that this was unusual because Ayman was always at work. They began preliminary investigations, surveilling the apartment from afar, and saw Zainab and Muhammad going to work as usual every day. By August 15, 2021, the police started discreetly questioning neighbors about Ayman. The neighbors said Zainab had claimed he was traveling, but the officer suspected that something was wrong and decided a deeper investigation was necessary. On August 20, 2021, they received new information about the daily fights between Ayman and Zainab, loud arguments every night. The neighbors confirmed that it happened daily, and they also learned about Zainab's history of fighting from previous years. The police noticed that Muhammad was riding Ayman's motorcycle, but Zainab and Mohammed's behavior appeared completely normal, with nothing suspicious. After a full month of his disappearance, traffic investigations confirmed that Ayman had not left Kalyubia Governorate at all. The responsible officer concluded that he had not traveled and began a deeper investigation. They asked the amusement park workers about him, who said they didn't know where he had gone. On September 5, 2021, a report came from villagers saying they had found half of a man's body in Sabah Canal. The team immediately responded. The police went to the scene and conducted a preliminary examination. The body was decomposed and belonged to a man who had been dead for about a month. The scars matched Ayman's description, and the officer said it was definitely him. They took samples to the forensic lab immediately and summoned Zainab to the police station for questioning about why she had not reported her husband missing. Zainab arrived extremely nervous because news of the body had spread quickly through the village. Under pressure from the prosecution, she broke down and confessed that she and Mohammed had killed Ayman exactly a month and a half earlier, revealing all the details. When asked about the motive, she said that Ayman had been constantly beating her and controlling everything, and she was exhausted from the abuse. Mohammed was summoned immediately and also confessed. He said Zainab had planned everything and had threatened that if he didn't help, she would kill him, so he assisted to protect himself. On September 10, 2021, the prosecution reenacted the crime under security guard supervision. Zainab demonstrated how she put the sleeping pills in Ayman's drink and how she wielded the knife. Mohammed showed where they had thrown the body parts, and the officers meticulously recorded everything. The forensic report confirmed that the body was Ayman's. Death was caused by multiple stabs to vital areas, and the dismemberment had been precise and deliberate, supporting their confessions. By the end of October, the prosecution referred the case to the Banha Criminal Court. Zainab al-Arja, 45 years old, a housewife with a history of fighting, and Mohammed, 25 years old, the husband of the deceased daughter and a worker in the amusement park, were the accused. In September 2022, the Banha Criminal Court sentenced Zainab and Mohammed to death by hanging after, determining that the crime was premeditated and cunning, with decisive evidence such as confessions and the reenactment. In the end, this case teaches us that domestic violence doesn't end on its own. We must seek help from those around us or official authorities. If anger takes control, it can destroy an entire family. Ayman was wrong in his ways, but Zainab and Mohammed chose a far worse path, and what happened is a harsh lesson for everyone. And with that, today's episode ends. If this is your first time watching the channel, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell to receive all new updates. Stay tuned for a new episode. Goodbye.